afternoon, everyone. Because I made my family eat leftovers last night, I'm going to give you a recipe today for a coffee cake. I know it's cooking 101 because I prefer to cook over baking, but this is a great coffee cake. One of the older ladies in one of my old churches used to make these coffee cakes for women when they had their new babies. She would come over with a blanket and a coffee cake and sit and chat with new moms. And what you're going to need for this today is you're going to need 2 sticks of butter, 2 eggs, a cup of sour cream, a cup of sugar, 2 cups of flour, a half a teaspoon of a half a teaspoon of baking powder, a half a teaspoon of baking soda, and a quarter of a teaspoon of salt. And then for the streusel, and also a teaspoon of vanilla. And then for your streusel, you need a half a cup of sugar, a half a cup of brown sugar, and a teaspoon of cinnamon. Also, you're going to want to set your oven to bake for 325 degrees. The first thing you're going to want to do is unwrap your butter or your margarine, whichever your choice is. I actually prefer to use butter. It gives it a nicer flavor. I'm going to throw that into if you don't have a mix master, you can just throw this into a mixing bowl and use a mixer. So you're going to want to take your 2 sticks of butter or margarine along with your 1 cup of sugar, and I'm doing this backwards. Just get it mixed up to a nice consistency. Once your butter and sugar are mixed well, you're going to want to take 2 eggs, put your eggs inside along with your butter and sugar mixture, and mix those in well till they come to a creamy consistency. Once your eggs are mixed in, take 1 teaspoon of vanilla or vanilla extract and add that. Get that mixed in well. And while that's mixing, you're going to want to take your 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder, and 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Mix them into your flour and give that a gentle mix. Instead of adding all of your flour mixture at one time, you're going to want to add only about half of that flour mixture into there. Give it a nice little mix. Don't want to mix it too fast or it'll fly all over the place. And once that becomes moist, then you want to add in half of your sour cream. And then as that becomes well blended, then we're going to add in the rest of the flour. Once that flour, the last part of the flour is added in, give it a good mix, and then add in the remaining sour cream. I'm going to hopefully catch this before it falls off the wall. Give that a really good mix. You should have a really good creamy consistency. If you need to, you can always scrape down your sides a little bit to make sure it gets mixed in really well. And once again, my favorite blue spatula is out. And now you have a really good consistency here. A really nice consistency to your batter. Then you're going to take your batter and we're going to get your pan prepped. I'm going to prep my pan with just some spray. Makes it easier for the pan. The worst part about this is when it comes to spreading your mixture into the pan, it's going to slide around a little bit. but that's okay. This is not a beautiful process. You're going to take half of your mixture and get it, it's going to be a thick mixture, get it dropped into your pan, and then start spreading it. And as you see, it'll come away a little bit because I have the spray in the bottom of the pan. I think I'm going to need a little bit more. Sometimes if you push it out to the edges, it catches on the edges, and that helps hold it. And there we have a nice layer across the bottom. So then you're going to take your brown sugar and your cinnamon mixture. This is considered the streusel mixture. And just mix it until it's completely mixed together. I ended up getting out a little bit of a bigger bowl because I was making a mess all over the place. So this is going to bring it to a nice consistency. Remember to scoop to the bottom of the bowl to pull up that sugar, that white sugar. Now what you're going to do is you're just going to take half of this strudel and just sprinkle it across the bottom. This is going to give you your nice middle consistency. I say consistency a lot, don't I? Well, I hope everyone's having a great Sunday. I hope those of you that were able to watch church online were able to do so. I'm going to go pick up some medication for my dad later and bring him half of this. Okay, that looks about half of it. Now comes the really frustrating part. You're going to take your leftover batter, and I like to try to drop it in different sections because it's going to stick to the streusel and it's going to be really hard to spread it evenly across the top. I actually think I have a little more batter for the top this time than I do the bottom, so hopefully that'll make it easier to spread. Still got a little bit more in the bottom of my bowl. Now where to put it? Put some here. Put a little more over here. Trying to scrape out my pan the best I can. All right, now here's where the difficult part comes in. I like to go out to the edges because sometimes it'll catch on the edge, sometimes it won't. As you see, it's just going to move all around. Sometimes I just have to use my fingers. I'm actually going to use this streusel spoon. This is a messy process. It's never easy to get this. Here, if the batter were thinner, I don't really want to have all that there. If the batter were thinner, it'd be easier to spread, but it is not. So, I'm going to do it the best I can. Smooth that out towards the edges. As I said, sometimes if you can catch the edge of the pan, it'll adhere there and it'll stay. It's okay if you have holes in it. It's not going to be a problem because you're just going to put more streusel on top. Streusel, I don't know what you want to call it. Your topping. As I said, it's a very messy process. It's not going to look pretty, but it doesn't matter if it tastes good. Right? So I'm just trying to cover these holes as best I can and not have really thick globs of batter sitting in certain spots. If you can get it to adhere, then you can usually get it to spread a little easier. And this one actually looks better than the last one I made. All right. I have a little bit more batter in the bowl that I'm going to just scrape off Try to fill in some of those little empty spots. I'm just going to drop it in there. And there's another empty spot. Here, I'm sure you guys can see all the empty spots that I'm not even looking at right now. And then you're just going to take the rest of your topping, your strudel topping, and just evenly spread it over the top. I always prefer to cook versus bake because baking is such a precise process, and cooking, I always feel like I can just throw this together and throw that together and it turns out fine, but sometimes in baking you have to be more precise about what you're doing. There we go. The only thing I want to do right now is I want to push down some of this off from the edges. Okay, now we're just going to throw this in that 325-degree oven for 45 minutes. Coffee cake is out of the oven, ready to be cut. I'm going to bring some to my dad and pass it through the front doors of his independent living to him. This is what it looks like when you cut it out. Enjoy the little sweet treat.